Oh, hello. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. So for welcome everyone, whether you're watching it live or you will be watching it later, but welcome to our biweekly YouTube lives.
Mhm.
Um, I am Mariana Llamas. I'm an associate planner here at Zena Financial Planning, and I am joined by
Danica Waddell. I am the president and founder / lead planner of Xena Financial Planning. And I'm really excited about our conversation today. Just talking about what it is like to actually work with a financial planner. I looked the stat up before we got on, and it's about a third of Americans currently work with a financial planner. So a lot of people do not. And I think a lot of people find it very intimidating. So we just kind of wanted to demystify that a little bit and talk about what you can expect if you work with somebody like us.
Yes. So to get started, do you want to get started with defining like what is even like a financial planner? Like you kind of hear this like oh, I should probably be working with a financial planner. Should I? Like when is it the right time? How do I even go about it? Like what does even a financial planner even do? Right? So
Yeah, there are a lot of questions that you might be asking, and we're not going to go into all of them because each of one of those we could spend 20 minutes talking about. But I did want to talk about what a financial planner is. Like, we're talking about working with somebody like us. Like, what do we do, or who are we? So if there's a lot of different terms in our industry or different titles. So you might hear financial planner, you might hear financial advisor, you might hear a lot of wealth manager, investment advisor. They're all similar, but not exactly the same. And so we're going to use the word financial planner or the term financial planner because that's how we identify. But you might hear some of those others, and they're not exactly interchangeable. But I'm not going to go into all the details of what the differences might be. But essentially, a financial planner is somebody that you would engage with who will help you, make financial decisions and create a plan for your life, right? So, when can I retire, and what should I do to save for my kids so I know that I can pay for college, or whatever goals that you might have. How do you get to them financially? And so that's generally the role of a financial planner. So again, our industry is super complex. There's a lot of different designations and titles and all that stuff. And the point of this conversation isn't to go through all of those, but to just talk in a more general sense about somebody like us. Again, we're going to use the term financial planner, and how we actually help people, what the experience is really like from the client perspective.
yep. So you need a financial planner. You are going to go interview some advisors or planners out there. But even when you do interview planners to see if like they're a good fit or not, you don't really get a sense of like, okay, but like what is like the actual work going to entail until you actually sign that agreement, begin like that relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
then like months go in and you're like, oh, this is what it's like. Or even like talking to other of your friends that might have already engaged with a financial planner and talking to them about their experience. And again, like Danica mentioned, there are different types of financial planners out there, different types of engagement. So it's going to vary by your own specific needs and what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But in general, what is like do you want to dive into like what is like the first step that or the first part of engaging a financial planner after you sign that agreement, you're ready to go, you're now a client?
Yeah. Well, typically you are going to, I mean, most people will interview a few financial planners before they start working with somebody. A lot of people will have on their website very clearly what their process looks like. Like we have, a series of meetings and this is what we cover. Not everybody does that. Actually, most people don't. So if you don't see that information on someone's website, you are more than welcome to ask, like, what can I expect in terms of, what sorts of documents do you need from me? How often do we meet? How do I communicate with you? Like those are things that, again, if the person isn't forthcoming, that you might very well want to ask. I also think it's really important to call out sort of the type of engagement that you are looking for. So, and you might not know this at the beginning, right? So if you're in the process of searching for somebody, you might not really be sure what you need. But there are some people that will, do project work or like a one-time plan, versus more ongoing work. And so we work with people on an ongoing basis, but many people are looking for just, hey, I just need help with this one thing. Like, could you give me some advice just on setting up college accounts, or could you give me advice just on, this particular tax question I have? So there's people that operate in, all of the different realms in terms of how they actually work with people. But that would be one thing that, certainly you would want to identify that pretty early on before you start going out and interviewing a whole lot of people, to sort of figure out which of those makes sense for you. And again, you might not know, but you'll hopefully get a decent feel for it from having a couple conversations like that.
Yep. And you can always ask, like you mentioned. Again, all planners are going to have like their own type of way that they do things. That's why it's important to be interviewing more than one planner.
Yeah. And even that initial interview process, the firm that I worked at before I launched Zena, we required people to complete, like, I think it was like a 12-page questionnaire and submit all of their tax returns for the last couple of years, pay stubs, every statement. I mean, we wanted everything before the first conversation, right? I think that's a little bit burdensome for people. So we don't require anything up front. You'll find a range. So there will be everything in between. But I think that can be a reason why people hold back. They might say like, oh, I'd really like to work with somebody, but like, oh, I've got to gather all my stuff together. What a pain in the butt. That's like super time consuming. A lot of people hold back because they are worried, and, it's very vulnerable to share all of your financial details with somebody, especially someone you've never met before.
Yep.
There's a lot of hesitation, I think, from the vulnerability side of things, and the feeling of being judged, like, oh, I don't want somebody to see how much credit card debt I have or something like that. So, and that's very very valid. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people in our industry will be very judgy about that sort of thing, like, oh, well, somebody made some bad choices or something like that. So hopefully people won't run into that, but it unfortunately does happen.
But that, I guess, like that is the part of even engaging with any type of financial planner. They are going to be asking for a lot of data upfront. And it's going to depend the amount of information that they do ask. Do they ask it up front when you do sign that agreement and you're ready to start working with them, or is it throughout the engagement? That's going to vary. But the point is that they're going to be asking a lot of intimate information, because that information and that data gathering part of like the financial planning process is very crucial. Like, if they don't know how much money you make, if they don't know how much money, where you're spending your money, it's going to be very hard for them to be able to help you. So it's also important for the client's perspectives, when you are hiring someone, to be ready to be vulnerable. And that's why it's important to be hiring someone that you do feel comfortable opening up to.
Yeah. I mean, I think, at a fundamental level, like, one of the parts of this whole process is, the very first thing the planner is going to want to do is like understand what your circumstances are, right? Like, where are you starting from? How much do you have in assets, and how many debts do you have, and what's your spending look like, and what's your tax bracket, and whatever, just getting a really clear understanding of where things are today. So yes, there's going to be a lot of disclosure involved in that. And then from there, getting to know you and understand who you are as a person, and like what's important to you. Like, what are we building towards? What's the point of all this? Because ultimately, you start with sort of like an analysis maybe of where things stand today. But the idea is that you're planning for something, right? That's why we're talking about financial planning. You're planning for something in the future, and you need your finances to be able to support that. And so making sure that first, you have a shared understanding with the person you're working with of what that future is, but also like what steps need to happen in order to make those things a reality. So maybe that means you have to save a little bit more to a different type of account, or you have to make other adjustments, because ultimately that is the goal, right? Is that you are working together towards sort of this financial plan of your future.
Right. So we covered the initial part of it. So a lot of data gathering, a lot of getting to know you. That information is only going to be as accurate as you provide them and as you disclose. And with that information, they are going to be able, the planner is going to take that and create a financial plan, assess like what are the things that need to happen to get you to those short-term, long-term, intermediate goals that you have that you have for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely what it comes down to. I'm of the opinion that like the way that we work on projects with our clients is like we are creating that plan together. It's not so much like, I don't generally deliver a plan to clients and say, here's your financial plan, just follow all my recommendations. I really like to co-create that plan with clients. But not every financial planner is going to work like that. So a lot of times you're going to sort of hand over your documents to a planner and they're going to sort of create a plan and say, here's your plan. Just follow the steps I outlined. So our process is maybe a little bit different from traditional.
Why is that? Why don't you just take the information and give them a plan and tell them what to do?
I've definitely done that. I think that you're kind of missing the mark when you do that a little bit because you don't have that sort of shared understanding of what's really important to a client. So we definitely do a lot more qualitative work, values work with our clients where we really want to understand and have that shared vision of what we're building towards rather than it just being like, oh, sure, you want to retire someday. Great. Like, I mean, I would like to know what does that mean for each client because everybody's got a different vision of what their retirement looks like. And so to me, there's so much more to it than just sort of putting some numbers into software and then there's the output over here and here's the plan. We want to really be clear on what exactly retirement, really defining those goals in a more broad way than just, we're putting more context to it beyond just the numbers, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I've heard that when people tell you things like when you are told that you have to do something, the likelihood of actually you like going out and doing it is probably like very slim to none, right? So it is better when the recommendation is done together as opposed to just being one-sided.
Yeah. So we definitely are a little bit less traditional in that realm as well. So in terms of actually, like when we get to the sort of recommendation phase with clients, we will often say like, hey, here's a range of options, or here's 2 or 3 different possibilities, some pros and cons. And then we want the client to ultimately make that decision themselves because they're going to be more motivated, like you said, versus us just saying, I think you should do this. And then clients are like, yeah, okay, that's great. I'm going to go home and totally ignore your advice.
So how does that look like? I know it's going to vary by the different type of financial planner that you do hire, but how does the delivery of recommendations, how does that go about? How long does the process of gathering data and getting to know you usually take for the planner to then step in and actually give you recommendations of where to go?
There are probably as many answers to that as there are financial planners. So you will find a wide range of lengths of time, what is the actual meeting frequency or the delivery mechanism look like? Everybody's going to do it a little bit different. So, I've worked in a place where it was a 75-page binder that you get, and then you kind of go through it together. I've worked in places like here, we do things much more collaboratively. So we do a lot of like screen sharing and things like that. But then, we'll put things into a deliverable so that it's easy for clients to reference, right? So it's like, okay, I know I'm supposed to do something about insurance, but like, what does that actually look like? And so we'll create some kind of document for people to follow the actual steps. And we do a lot with clients around implementation and following through on the recommendations. Some planners, again, will just sort of tell you, here's 10 things to do, good luck. I've seen, pretty limited success with that. And so we'll actually help people through the implementation part of it. But it's really, for us, I would say it can take several months to kind of get through the initial process. That's pretty long. A lot of planners will do it in much shorter time frame. There's no good or bad about it being shorter or longer, but I find spreading it out actually allows people to process it a little bit more rather than being overwhelmed by too many things at once.
Because financial planning, you're touching on a lot of different aspects of finances, right? It's your how the way that you spend your money, where are you saving to, is your investments, insurance, estate planning, right? Like it's a lot
A
that
lot.
is packed into financial planning, and depending on where you are in your stage of your life, you might need all of those different topics to like it's going to take a lot of time to go through them, or if you're very early on you can get through a lot of them a lot faster.
Mhm.
So again, like that duration of the engagement is going to vary.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and I think, one of the things you and I were talking about earlier, how I really like to view the work that we do is, to be really a thinking partner or thought partner, for our clients so that, as things come up in their lives, I mean, we have several clients who are considering job change, sabbatical, time off, like just different variations on that. And for us to be able to really get into the details and figure out like, how much cash do you need on hand? What are you going to do about medical insurance? Like really evaluating those things with clients in real time, I think is incredibly valuable. So a lot of our work is very, it's a process. So, financial planning in general, I would not expect it to be a one and done kind of like, oh, you get your plan and then you're just on that course and you don't have to think about it too much. I mean, it really is pretty rare for us to have clients that like don't have something pretty significant going on at least once every year or two, where it's like job change, house change, having a baby, getting married, like those things, that's just life. I think we're meant to have something like 35 transitions in our lives. And that's things like, loss of a parent, marriage, divorce, like all those sorts of things are transitions. But I think there's something like an average of 35 throughout our lives. And so, yeah, like, almost every year or two, there's going to be something big. So that's another thing that I think is really important to keep in mind about this work is that
Mhm.
it is iterative and ever evolving. And there's never just like oh yeah, we created our financial plan, we set off on our course and like, never had to think about it, set it and forget it. Like it really doesn't work like that.
Right. And we're kind of touching on like the end part of the process, like what it's of the process of financial planning, where it's like the implementation of the recommendations that were done, and then the ongoing process of monitoring
Mhm.
the actual recommendations. The financial plan is everything good, and that's usually done like on an ongoing basis. But just think about the last 5 years of your life. How many changes have you gone through where, right? Like 5 years ago, you might have been in a really good spot where you think, things are going well. I don't see any changes in the foreseeable future, but then life happens. And that's why there is a benefit of establishing that relationship with a financial planner, um, and going through the process of financial planning. And then even after you're done and you think you're good, things might come up later on. And again, depending on the type of engagement, it might be a one-time engagement, and you are pretty kind of set for a little bit of while,
Nice.
right? That could also happen. But
Mhm.
then 5, 10 years into the future, things might definitely change. The recommendations that the financial planner set in stone years ago are probably outdated, right?
Sand, write your financial plan in sand, I think is more like it. But yes.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's an
yeah. I
ongoing
mean,
process.
even if you do something like a one-time engagement, chances are good, whether you're pretty stable for a couple of years or not,
Mhm.
that you will have to update that periodically, regardless. So this is, I mean, we're totally scratching the surface on this conversation in terms of what it is actually like to work with a financial planner. Some of our systems are very different from a traditional person, but like we do have a lot of information on our website about, how often do we meet and how do we communicate and what does the meeting structure look like and those sorts of things. So that can be helpful. And again, some people many people do have that sort of detail on their sites just for research purposes. But happy to answer more questions if you have them. Feel free to send us a message. You can email hello@zenafp.com and we'll both get it. We can also revisit this on a future call if you have specific questions. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to plug in 2 weeks, we're doing a YouTube Live with Jim Morocco, who is the founder of Thinking Big Financial. And it's going to be celebration of Pride and talking about financial considerations for LGBTQ folks.
Yes, we are very excited for that. And if you are you're going to tune in live, make sure to head over to our YouTube page if you're not there already, and set a reminder for that event in the next coming weeks.
And send questions if you have them. So Jim and I will take questions as well if you have anything in advance. But thanks for coming, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.
See ya.
Okay, ciao.